Good evening, everyone. Hello, welcome to tonight's 8 p.m. Focus activity, 8 to 10. If you have been watching webinars, you may or may not have done a webinar with me before. If you haven't, I will introduce myself. So my name is Sean. I come from Ireland. I am 21 years old and I have been living and working in Milan since September. I work in the school on Via Meravigli, one of the 3 schools here in Milan. So, as in every webinar, everyone please introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell me where you come from, what's your name, your school, anything about yourself. Please interact, communicate. It's just me this evening in the webinar, so I'd really like if anyone is watching to write in comments so there can be a bit of back and forth in this webinar. Anyway, I will introduce the topic. So, focus activity 8 to 10, wonders of the world. So this is a focus where we talk about the wonders of the world. So the wonders of the ancient world and discussing wonders. So if you're not sure exactly what the implication of wonder is, we will obviously go through that, don't worry. It is a specific set of vocabulary, but I think it's an interesting topic. And it's one that we can use to revise passives. Passives of absolutely every tense, because the beauty of passives is that the rules are the same for every single tense. And we will be going through that. I see there's a few people watching now. Please introduce yourself and tell me your name, where you come from, and as we go along, answer any questions on screen, answer any exercises, matching activities, fill the gaps, all of the things that we have in our focuses. And if at any point you have difficulty hearing me, seeing the slides, technical issues, the comments are a good place to inform me and let me know. Okay. So keep introducing yourself and we'll have a look at the first slide, which is kind of a warm-up for this focus. So we have wonder. So this focus is talking about the wonders of the world. So we have a wonder and to wonder. So the word has a few different meanings, different forms. There's the noun and there's the verb. And the meanings are different. It's not the most common verb or common word. So you may be a little bit unfamiliar with the meanings. And we'll outline 3 here. So the verb and the noun. The desire to know something or to feel curious. I wonder what will happen in 10 years' time. So you are expressing a want or a desire to know what will occur, what will happen, to know something. Yes? Or to feel admiration and amazement, to marvel. We looked at the painting and wondered at the brilliant colors. So there's 2 meanings to the verb to wonder. We have some comments coming in from viewers. We have Naduni. Hi, I'm Naduni from Bologna. I go to Maya School in Bologna since last year. Hi, Naduni. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for your comment. And we have Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. Where are you writing from? Where do you live? Where in Italy, we actually don't have just students from Italy at the moment. We sometimes have students from Spain and France, so we're really a bit international at the moment. Oh, and we have Yoon from Milan, who's one of our students, I believe. I'm not sure if I've taught you, but okay, Vanessa is from Milan. Great. Okay, some people from Milan, some people from Bologna. Very good. Thank you for spending your evening with me. I'm sure maybe there's not much else to do at the moment under lockdown. So, the noun, we looked at the verb, two meanings of the verb, and the noun is a feeling of amazement and admiration caused by something beautiful, remarkable, or unfamiliar. She felt a great wonder as she looked at the stars. So you have the feeling of wonder, and then an object, a person or thing regarded as very good or remarkable. The Grand Canyon was a great wonder to see. So it could be a thing, the Grand Canyon, or it could be a person. She was a wonder as an individual. So the word has similar meanings that relate to each other, but it can be used as a verb, as a noun, and it's a good example of the way in English, it's a very fluid language. Vocabulary is not that straightforward. A word can have different uses, different meanings, different words that are related to the same root of a particular word. For example, we have wonderful, which is a very common generic word to say something is great, something is good, something is positive. It was a wonderful day. We had a good time. Not necessarily extraordinary the way a wonder is, because a wonder is extraordinary. Wonderful is a bit more commonplace, a bit more standard. Anyway, that was just kind of an introduction to the topic, especially important if you weren't clear on what a wonder is. So we will move on. So we have some questions here, and I would like you all in the comments to answer them. So, have you ever heard of the seven wonders of the ancient world? What are they? What do you think makes something a wonder? There is one ancient wonder that is still standing. Which is it? So, answer the questions in the comments, please. Let me know your answers to these questions. Have you heard of the seven wonders? What are they? What do you think makes something a wonder? And there is one ancient wonder that is still standing. Do you know which it is? So, kind of a little discussion of history, of culture. It's certainly a very common discussion, common concept, the wonders of the world. But sometimes it's easy to forget what they actually are because we have the ancient wonders, and then we have different versions, the modern wonders, the natural wonders. It can get confusing. So please, in the comments, anyone who's watching, Aduni, Vanessa, Yoon, please tell me, have you ever heard of the seven wonders of the ancient world? What are they? What do you think makes something a wonder? And there is one ancient wonder that is still standing. Do you know which it is? So, while you're sending in your answers, I can maybe answer the second one from my perspective, because this one is sort of asking for an opinion. I think that something has to be very exceptional, very unique to be a wonder. Generally speaking, I think wonders are on a very big scale. They're very big, large, enormous, an enormous scale, I would say. This is a good way to say very big. The wonders of the ancient world, of the modern world, are generally things that are on an enormous scale, are in some way unique, singular, one of a kind, um, something that you cannot see in everyday life, that you can only see in this one spot, something that is really unique, impressive, large, amazing, you know. This is what I think of when I something is described as a wonder. Okay, Vanessa has given us an answer. Are places in the world? Yeah, exactly. They're places in the world, the wonders, particular geographic locations associated with a particular country, a particular culture, usually. With the seven wonders of the ancient world, they're associated with ancient civilizations, ancient cultures, but certainly the modern wonders and modern natural wonders are places, geographic places. And I think talking about places is also important because really the wonders of the world, as we will see a bit later in the focus, are kind of an invention to encourage tourism, to really emphasize the importance of a place and make people feel that they have to visit, that it is really important for them to see this thing. I think the implication of the seven wonders is that they're the seven greatest things made by human beings, and that I think, at least for me, when you talk about that, that gives me a desire to see them, to see what is so wondrous, what is so wonderful about these monuments, these places, what is so unique, what is so singular, gives you a real desire to go to that place. Yeah. So what are they? I mean, it depends. I don't think I personally, um, from the top of my head, I could not name all seven wonders of the ancient world. I could name maybe three or four because some are very famous. One is still standing. Um, I'd be interested to know if any of you know which it is and what are they. We will go through them one by one towards the end of the focus, but before that, I want to see if you can guess. So do guess in the comments, and I'll just go on to the next slide, which sort of explains the origin of the original list. So I will read, and if there's any questions about vocabulary, please send in a question. I'm here to explain. So the earliest guidebook. So a guidebook is a good a good word. A guidebook, maybe nowadays with the internet, they're not so popular, but certainly in the past, if you were going on holiday to a new place, you would maybe invest in a guidebook which would explain the most significant things to see, give recommendations for restaurants, for hotels, things like this. A guidebook, a book of recommendations and suggestions for visiting a place. So very much associated with tourism. And the list of the seven wonders of the ancient world was the earliest guidebook that we know. It's incredible that there was a culture of tourism even at this point, that people wanted to travel the world the same way we do. So, let me read. The wonders of the ancient world are a list of amazing sights from the Greco-Roman world. The Greeks ruled most of the civilized world by the 4th century BC, so tourism to the big cities of Egypt, Persia, and Babylon became popular. People started to make lists of the wonderful sights to see, a guidebook of the ancient world. The most famous list was written by Antipater of Sidon. Today, many people have created their own lists of ancient wonders to include the entire world. So, there's an important point made here about the original list. They were amazing sights from the Greco-Roman world. So, it might be obvious, but the Greco-Roman world is the section of the world which was known to, which was familiar to the Greeks and the Romans. So Europe, southern, central Europe, not really the far north of Europe, North Africa, above the Sahara Desert, and Central Asia, Central Asia and the Near East. Certainly not so much China or India or the Far East. So this kind of area where you had places like Egypt, Persia, modern-day Iran, and Babylon, modern-day Iraq. So this area is certainly very famous as kind of the birthplace of a civilization where you had, the first societies, the first cities, and the civilization sort of gradually spread from Babylon to Egypt to Greece and finally, of course, to Rome, which was a really significant empire. And really, it was very common in this period for there to be great empires, for there to be really powerful kingdoms and states, which had things like slaves and so they could create wonders because it's difficult to build a wonder if you're paying everyone and you know you don't have great natural resources that an enormous empire has. So generally, I think wonders were sort of in this context about expressing the power of a civilization to kind of show the significance of this civilization. It was an impulse to make a place important, I suppose. I mean, we're talking about tourism here, but it was a display of power in a big way as well, I imagine. And of course, we're talking about the Greco-Roman world, not the whole world. So here we have a pyramid. I'm not sure where in South America or Central America, probably. It looks like maybe it's a Mayan pyramid, the kind that they have in Mexico and El Salvador and countries where the Mayan and Aztec empires were. So there were empires all over the world, in China, in Central South America, in Africa, that built huge monuments like the ones in Europe and Western Asia, North Africa, that weren't included because Antipater of Sidon was not aware of them. So they don't make this list, but they are worth certainly visiting and knowing about because we know about the whole world now. So, without further delay, here they are. Here are the ancient wonders. So, we have their names. So, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Colossus of Rhodes, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, and the temple and the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. So, I want you to match the pictures with the names. So think of them as picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, picture 4, picture 5, 6, and 7, and match them to the names. Certainly some of them are more famous than the others, and you may or may not be familiar. We have a few people watching, so I'll give you a minute to match up the names with the pictures. So please match the words and the pictures, and maybe I'll just explain a little bit what some of these terms are. So the Great Pyramid of Giza. So a pyramid is this shape exactly, a triangular shape, and this is the one that's still standing. We had that question a few slides ago. Which great wonder the world is still standing? It is the Great Pyramid of Giza. You can visit it in Egypt. I would love to. I have not had the opportunity. I had a friend who went and said that it was, first of all, it was very, very hot, nearly 50 degrees Celsius, which I don't know, it would maybe not so pleasant. And even less pleasant, maybe, is the fact that you can go inside the pyramid, but it's a very claustrophobic space. It's a very closed entrance and closed passageway, because obviously these were tombs. They did not want people to enter and exit, so they were not made to be comfortable for that. But still, it's certainly a wonder to behold. And insofar as it's the only one that still stands, I think that it's really important to see this. It's a testament to the ancient world. So I just said a term there, to behold, a verb, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's a good one for something like a wonder. To behold is to see something, to perceive something, but usually something fairly incredible. So like a wonder or a very beautiful person or beautiful place, beautiful landscape. You don't behold something mundane, something everyday. You have to behold something extraordinary to perceive or see something extraordinary. Then we have the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which no longer exists. None of these, other than the Pyramid of Giza, still stand, still exist. Often, for some of them, you can still see the ruins, but the rest of the building it's certainly not the way that it appears in these wonderful pictures. I don't know how big they are for you to see them. And the Lighthouse of Alexandria. So a lighthouse is a very common thing to find across the world. It's a very important kind of building where it's on the coast by the sea, and there's a light so that at night time, when the ships are coming into shore, the lighthouse can shine the light and show the ships the coastline. A very important kind of building, and this particular lighthouse was in Alexandria, which was in Egypt. And I know certainly that the Lighthouse of Alexandria was the where Cleopatra died. I don't know if you've seen the film with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. It's a great one to see. And in that film, you have The Lighthouse of Alexandria. So we have some comments. Absolutely wonderful to see comments coming in. So Yoon has said the first picture is the Great Pyramid of Giza, and Elena, hi Elena, has also identified it correctly. Very good, guys. Try and get the other ones. Great stuff. So then we have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So as I said before, Babylon is the modern day Iraq, which and there's very many sites and places to see in Babylon, but not so much of it is still standing because Babylon was particularly ancient, and therefore we only really have accounts of the Hanging Gardens from things like Antipater of Sidon. We don't actually have a good idea of what they looked like. We know that they were created um, for a Babylonian queen, a Babylonian princess, who came from a particularly green area. And she was brought to Babylon, which is in the middle of the desert, a very dry area with no water, no trees, no flowers, and she was very sad. So the king built her a wonderful garden where exactly how things were hanging is hard to say because we don't have any archaeological evidence. Archaeological is maybe a good word for this. Archaeology, you may or may not be familiar with, is the excavation of things in the earth, traces of the ancient world or nature from millions of years ago. So archaeology, the science of extracting ancient remnants from the earth. Okay, very good. And the Colossus of Rhodes. Rhodes is a Greek island, which is, I believe, a very beautiful place to go on holiday, like many Greek islands. But unfortunately, there is no more a Colossus there, which would be very impressive. And anything that is colossal is a good adjective. So colossus is the noun, colossal is the adjective. Colossal is like enormous, extremely big or large. And Vanessa, excellent, has correctly identified it as the second picture. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. So a colossus is a big statue, as you can see. Maybe you can't see in the picture, but in the second picture, the Colossus, it's, I believe, of a Greek god. I can't remember which one, but he stood with one foot on either side of the port so that the ships had to go under his legs to enter the city by the sea. It must have been really extraordinary. Statue of Zeus at Olympia. Zeus was the king of the gods, the father of the gods in Greek civilization. In Rome, which was, they had the same religion, they just changed the names. He was Jupiter, I believe. So a statue of him at Olympia, which is again in Greece, and it was in a temple. And certainly in Greece, there are still very, very many temples across. Unfortunately, none of the ancient wonders, but we have, the Parthenon, which is certainly on my bucket list, somewhere I would love to see. So bucket list is it came from the film The Bucket List with Morgan Freeman. I don't know if you've seen it, but the plot is that a man is dying and he creates a list of things to do before he kicks the bucket. And to kick the bucket is to die. So a bucket list is a list of things to do, things to see, things to spend your time doing before you die. And it comes from the idiom to kick the bucket, which is to die, to pass away. And it's actually a very common, something you quite commonly talk about, a bucket list, as the things, it's not necessarily about death, it's just about things that would be really great to do, really important for you to do before you pass away, some things that you want to see in your lifetime. Yeah, so the Parthenon is definitely on my bucket list. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. So again, this is kind of a Greek monument, though Ephesus is in modern day Turkey, because in ancient times it was Greeks who lived in Turkey. But now Ephesus, I believe, is a very nice place to go for a beach holiday. But there's no more temple, I don't think. But a temple is a word for a place of worship that we still use for certain religions. You have Buddhist temples and you have Hindu temples. So those two religions. But other religions generally have adopted different words for their places of worship. Christians have their churches or cathedrals. Muslims have their mosques. Jews have their synagogues. And yeah, I think that's the major world religions anyway. But a temple is quite a generic term for a place of worship, particularly anything to do with ancient times, a temple. And the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, I'm not certain where Halicarnassus is, certainly somewhere in the Greek world, maybe in Turkey, maybe, or one of the islands, something like that. And a mausoleum is a word for a building that's a kind of grave. A mausoleum is a kind of grave. But it's more than a grave. It's more than just a stone. It's a building. So when a person has a whole building to commemorate the place where they are, it's quite common in Italy, certainly, for some people to be buried, to be interred in a mausoleum. It's not unusual, I know that much, but to be buried at the mausoleum of Halicarnassus would be something fairly spectacular. Anyway, thank you to those of you who matched up some of them. It's probably a bit tricky for some of the other ones, but this third picture is the lighthouse. Oh, Elena's comment. Elena and Vanessa have just come through. Yeah, exactly. This is the lighthouse. I don't know how well you can see the picture, but it's kind of a very tall building, a bit like a skyscraper. And at the top, there was a fire. Because back then, obviously, they didn't have electricity, so they had to use a fire to illuminate the ocean, to illuminate the sea for ships. Very good. That's the lighthouse. Excellent, Vanessa. Number 4 is indeed the statue of Zeus. Very good, everyone. I'll move along, and number 5 is the mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the temple of Artemis, and the Hanging Gardens. So this is a very typical kind of temple. It looks a bit like a Parthenon, as you can see. And then the Hanging Gardens, you can see all of the flowers and the trees, which is just an artistic imagination because we don't really know what it looked like. And then the mausoleum is this kind of funny particular shape, but for a kind of a grave or a monument, it's not that uncommon. I think there's some Roman monuments like this. So thank you guys for the matching that you did, and we will move along to talking about passives, which is the grammar point of this particular text. This particular focus. So we have a little text here that has passives in it. I would very much like you to find the passives in this text. So I'm sure you've done the lessons about passives at some point. There's several lessons looking over passives of different tenses. There is one in level 8 and I think 2 in level 9. And there are some more unusual tenses using passives here, but there's definitely also some past simple passives, present simple passives. So see what ones you can find. Please find the passives in the chat. And yeah, so find passives in the text and put them in the chat. So I will read through this text while you find the passives. So the Great Pyramid was the first wonder built and is the only one that still stands today. It had already been constructed in 600 BC when the next oldest wonder, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, were created. The exact dates are uncertain, but archaeologists think the pyramid was built in the years 2584 to 2561 BC. Its original white facade and golden cap have long since been plundered, but it is visited by about 3 million people every year. So wonderful stuff you're sending in your comments. You're finding the passive. So exactly, Yoon and Vanessa have this one. Was built. Exactly. So was built. This is a past simple passive. So we have was the first wonder built, but you're dead right. The passive portion is was and built. So this is a past simple passive. For the past simple passive, you need to be in the past. So was or were. With the past participle. And this is in every single passive, you have the past participle. You have the main verb from the active clause becomes a past participle. So if this was active, it would be it would be the people of Egypt built the Great Pyramid. So the verb in the past simple, built, it's the same in the past participle, but it changes. Was built, you put in was, you put in to be in the past. And in every passive, you have to be, and to be will be in the tense that you want to use. So here, it's the past simple, was. In the present, is, are, am. In present perfect, present perfect are being, something like this, yeah? Okay, we have been constructed. Excellent, had already been constructed, so there you go. This is a past perfect, which is a tricky tense. The past perfect is had, past participle. And it is used to talk about an action which happened before another in the past. So a completed action before another in the past. So here it had already been constructed. We are situating this action before the Hanging Gardens were created, another passive, excellent. So we have kind of two tenses in this sentence, past perfect and past simple. Past perfect will always be with the past simple or a different past tense, because the past perfect needs to be within the context of another action happening in the past. You don't use the past perfect unless you need to say that something happened before something else. So it's saying that the pyramid had already been constructed when the next oldest wonder, Hanging Gardens, were created. So it's a way of situating something before anything else. And the passive form is had been. So had been, to be in the past perfect. Had with the past participle. Okay, and you seem to have gotten all of them at this stage. Let me see. Were created. Was built, again, the same as in the first sentence. There's another was built. Very good, Vanessa seems to have gotten most of them. And we have another one, which is a bit of a strange verb. You may not be familiar with it. Have long since been plundered. So this is present perfect. Have been. So past perfect, had been, present perfect, have or has been. Yes? So the difference is the present perfect. You know the way we use the present perfect. In this particular context, its original white facade and golden cap have long since been plundered. So you're talking about something which happened at a point in the past, but not a specific point. It happened at some point in the past up to the present moment. So what happened is the original white facade, you can see in the first picture, a facade is generally a building. You often talk about a facade. It's the front of a building. And the facade is the face. So the face of the pyramid and the golden cap, which was at the top, have been plundered. Plundered is a verb, to plunder. It's a synonym of steal, usually in a historical context. So either you talk about pirates plundering, or people plundering from historical sites. So stealing in some relation to history, I would say. Very good. Elena has that one. And she also got the last one. Is still visited. So this is a present simple passive. Is still visited by about 3 million people every year. So in present day, it's still visited. And something that I haven't spoken about, which is very important if we're talking about passives, is, why are we using passives in this text? Very often in this particular text, it's because we don't know who did this action. The past is the only way in English you can speak about an action where you don't know who the subject is. We don't know who built the Great Pyramid of Giza. We don't know who built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. We don't know the individuals. Often we don't know very much of anything about it. So we can't say, John and Mary built the Great Pyramid of Giza. We don't know. The Great Pyramid was the first wonder built. The subject is eliminated, and also the object takes center stage because it's more important, it's more significant in this context. It would be strange to make these sentences emphasizing the subjects because the piece is about this thing, this object, which was created, which the actions occurred to it. It's an object, but we talk about it in a central way, so it makes sense to use passives. So before I move on, just a quick note, quick revision of everything I was saying about passives, because it can get a bit confusing when you're talking about all the different tenses together. But really, there's one rule with any passive, which is to be in the tense of the main verb in the active clause plus the past participle. Now, this may be confusing to read just like that, the main verb in the active clause, but think about it. So this is a passive clause, this is a passive sentence. Very often you can make a same sentence in an active way. You can just put the subject back to the front and put the object after the verb. So 3 million people visit the pyramid at Giza every year. So that's the last sentence. It is still visited by about 3 million people. So in the active form, it's in present simple. People visit. So if we want to make it passive, we swap the verb and the object. We put the pyramid at Giza, it, to the front of the sentence. And we have to follow it by is visited. To be in the tense of the main verb in the active clause. So visit, the main verb in the active clause, was in present simple. So to be takes that tense, becomes is, and that's followed by the past participle. Yeah? It's a bit complicated, but I know it's not too dissimilar to Italian, and generally students can handle this subject. They can get a bit confused when you have something like the past perfect and you have several auxiliary elements like had already been constructed. It can get confusing, but try and remember the rule and always keep it in your mind when you are talking about passives. So we have just a few minutes left. I think, yeah, we have the rules here. It's very important. So you can think of them all together, like um, like I put here, or you can separate them, whatever you find easiest. So you can talk about the present, is or are plus past participle, past, was or were plus past participle, present perfect, have been, has been plus past participle, and past perfect, had been plus past participle. Okay, so we just have about 2 minutes, and I think we'll talk a little bit about maybe the wonders of Italy. We just have some moments left, but I'd be curious to know what you think are the wonders of Italy. Just a little kind of, a little discussion of wonders, which we were talking about earlier. And I think at this time it's it's a difficult time for Italy, for your country. It's very good to remember what is so amazing about it, because part of why I came to Italy is because for me it's a country that's really it's full of wonders. I think there are the most UNESCO sites any country in the whole world in Italy, more than China, which is a much bigger and higher populated country. So it has a lot to offer. Certainly, speaking for myself, buildings and work of art. I mean, if I think of buildings, I think of here in Milan, the Duomo. It's huge, huge cathedral, really, really impressive works of art. I mean, in Italy, there is no shortage. The Uffizi in Florence is a place that I've visited many times, and each time it's more wonderful, more wondrous. Literature, I mean, in Italy you have the Divine Comedy, which I will admit I have not read, but it's on my bucket list. Vanessa has suggested the Colosseum, which, yeah, the Colosseum is a very ancient wonder, which is still standing and still extremely impressive, you know. I mean, it's hard not to feel, you know, emotional when you're in front of the Colosseum, and it was on my bucket list, but I ticked it off the bucket list when I went to Rome a few years ago. So to tick off the bucket list, to do something, and you tick the list. And technology, I mean, in Italy, there's the origins of many technical invention, things like the radio and the telephone. I think there's a lot of Italian claims to have invented this, and certainly in medicine, there are many Italian innovations and things like that. And I mean, nature also. There's a lot of well, I mean, here we have kind of an alpine scenery, which in the north of Italy, you know, you have the Alps, which are really spectacular. And I mean, things like I think the Amalfi Coast are very, for their beauty, are very unique, natural beauty. Yeah, and Elena has says, your city of Verona, wonderful, the Arena of Verona, yeah, an amazing place. I would love to see a concert or an opera in the Arena di Verona. So, thank you guys for following me there. It was a lot of history, a lot of passives, but you seem to keep it tuned in and answer my questions. And you found the passives very well, everyone. So very good job on that for this time of the evening. And with that, I will say goodbye for today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in another webinar over the next few weeks. I will be continuing to do webinars, as will my fellow teachers. So bye bye, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.